Hey everyone, it's Jack here again. So this week we're going to be mixing some vocals. The artist is Alex Incani. The track is Only Life. She's a really talented singer-songwriter from Italy, so please go check her out if you enjoy the music. This is a tutorial all about how to kind of sit a vocal into a track. For years I struggled so much mixing vocals. I felt like it was so hard to blend them into the music. You just had this vocal sitting outside of a track by itself, lonely and kind of unloved. But this is a tutorial all about how to kind of gradually blend a vocal back in and help it to compete with a busy, big kind of indie rock mix. I really hope you get something from this. These are tips and tricks that I've built up over years of mixing. You know, they're tailored to this track, but they're useful across the board and all kinds of things. So the vocal chain that I'm using is the Sontronics Orpheus microphone. It's actually this one that I'm talking into, going into the 4710D, which is a Universal Audio 4-channel mic preamp. No compression, no EQ, completely dry. So that's the vocal that you hear at the beginning before any effects are added. So let's jump over to the Pro Tools session and have a little listen. So this is the track, and here is the vocal right in front of me here. All the music is above it. All these colourful blobs here are the vocal cuts that I made. We did multiple takes and then pasted them all together. That's usually how I work in Pro Tools. So I'm going to be running down stage by stage, step by step, every single move that I made on this vocal. A big problem I always have with vocals, and I don't know if you guys find this too, when you have a clean vocal in quite a big, busy track, I can struggle to kind of blend that vocal into the track. I often find that you feel the vocal's kind of sitting outside of the track range instead of kind of blending into it and living in the space of the track. Over the years, I've kind of built up these methods and learned a lot from a lot of really great people of how to kind of do this a bit. This is just for this particular track, this is a particular kind of set of methods that I've used to do it, and it's always different for every single track that you mix. Okay, so I'm going to start right from the beginning, starting over here with all these plugins. So I've got a whole bunch of plugins over here to the left, and then next to them I've got a whole bunch of sends, and together they kind of they build this kind of vocal sound between them. I'm just going to hit play so you can see what we've got with all the effects on at the beginning. So this is with everything on.
In the eyes of a child, you can see life in everyone who had to fight. You can see life in all the hope that you have. It's for everyone around you. Just one more reason and one more chance. It's only life.
Right, so that's the verse going into the chorus. I'm going to take everything off, and then we're going to have a listen with everything off to see where we started. I think it's quite revealing to see what the raw vocal sounds like without any of this stuff helping it out. And this is a sound that you may be familiar if you've spent hours trying to mix things. Here's the raw vocal on top of the track.
In the eyes of a child, you can see life in everyone who had to fight. You can see life in all the hope.
So to my ears, it instantly sounds mega amateur, and it sounds mega separated from the track, and it's just not blending at all. It kind of sounds bland and stripped away of all of the flavors surrounding it. And it's taken me a long time to figure out how to, what to add in these kinds of situations. And again, it changes for every situation. But I'll start right at the beginning. So we have a couple of a single surgical EQ right at the beginning here, just pulling out a single frequency. And I'll show you what that's doing.
In the eyes of a child,
If I turn it right up.
you can see life in everyone who had to fight. You can see light.
So that would have been just a single frequency that instantly jumped out to me, that I just snipped out. And as you progress through mixing, you kind of start hearing these frequencies. And if not, you can kind of pull these bands up and just scan around and try and find anything that's really buzzing, and that's really kind of distracting from that vocal. I think a lot of mixing is about getting rid of the stuff that's distracting and is getting in the way of that vocal coming across properly. So we'll move on quickly to the first stage of compression. I felt like I didn't need to EQ as much at the beginning on this one, so I jumped straight on and threw this thing on it, which is one of the world's most famous compressors. It's the LA3A, and it's a wonderfully tuned vocal compressor that has a set attack and release. I think it was built for broadcasting originally, but then kind of got abducted into the musical world because it was such a natural vocal compressor. I'm going to do a big video just on compression because it's something that I really struggled with over the years, kind of figuring out, and it took a lot of reading and a lot of videos and a lot of watching to really get to grasps with compression properly. But when you get it, you really start seeing results. And I'll try and talk through a bit of what I'm doing here with the compression as we go. Let's just listen to what this one's doing.
In the eyes of a child,
Without.
you can see life.
With.
In everyone who had to fight, you can see light.
So it's instantly kind of squeezing the sound a bit, and that's what this thing does really well. It kind of squeezes the middle of the sound, and it's sounding to my ears like it's pushing the vocal forward. It's pushing it into your face a bit. And this is the wonderful thing about compression, is it kind of pushes things forward and flattens them at the same time, bringing up all of those tiny, the details in the voice. And then I'm following this one up with probably another of the world's most famous compressors, the 1176. This one is working quite fast. I've got a fast attack, a fast release. This means that it's hitting the sound quite quickly. It's catching the transients, the pops, and it's squeezing even more. So the LA2A over here is kind of helping to squidge the middle of the sound, and this is just tucking it in that stage more. We'll have a quick listen to it as well.
In the eyes of a child, you can see life. In everyone who had to fight,
I'll take it out.
you can see light and all the hope.
So when I take it out, the volume actually increases, which is a very common trick. It's a very easy trap to fall into. Things that are louder instantly sound better. But this is actually controlling the sound a bit more. It's tucking in the low end of the sound. And by all means, if I'm moving too fast for anything, then rewind and rewatch and rewind and rewatch. I've spent thousands of hours rewinding and rewatching videos to really kind of absorb things. But I'll try not to babble too much and just kind of move quickly through these chains. So I'm going to leave that one in, and we'll move on to this, which is the Studer A800 tape machine plugin. This is here in my mind to kind of try and round off some of those digital spiky edges that you get with zeros and ones as opposed to recording straight to tape. It helps with a bit of compression as well. It kind of tape has this thing where it squeezes things a bit as well, and kind of rounds off the low end. I know all of these terms sound really ridiculous as I'm saying them, and I've heard people repeat them in the past and have thought, what on earth does that mean? It's going to be subtle, but I'll turn it on and see if you can hear it.
In the eyes of a child, you can see life.
With it off.
In everyone who had to fight,
Back on.
you can see light.
So it's adding a bit of a kind of low end thing and a tiny bit of kind of graininess is how I describe it. I think tape has this lovely, even the emulators have this lovely way of just adding a little bit more texture. And it's very subtle. Again, if you can't quite hear it, try with headphones, try with some good speakers, but don't beat yourself up if you're new to mixing and you can't quite hear what these things are doing, because it does take some ear training. It's taken, a long time for me to really, really understand what these things are doing. And I think it just is a matter of just mixing a lot. And it's not essential either. I think you don't have to buy this Universal Audio Studio A800 plugin in order to make a great vocal sound. This is just something that I had, that I've used and that I like and I've built up over the years. But when I first started, it was very simple, stock EQs and compressors, and you can do wonderful things with them. So don't worry about that. I'm going to move on to another surgical EQ move, just another wobbly bit down here that got snipped out. We'll move past that quite quickly because it's not that interesting to look at. It was just a bit of a buzzing bass sound. And then this is now the third compressor in the chain. I'd always feel a bit bad at the beginning adding lots of compressors to a chain, thinking, is this, surely, people don't do this at the top end, but I can assure you that, world-class mix engineers use compression all over the place at every single stage of everything, in multiple areas, to try and snip in those sounds, to add an EQ, then a compressor, then a tape emulator, then another compressor, then another EQ, then another tape emulator, and they're all kind of placed to thicken the sound, to bring the sound forward, to make it fatter, more in your face, more exciting. This one is a slightly slower attack and release, but it's probably just fattening things up a bit. I'll have a quick listen to it.
In the eyes of a child, you can see life in everyone who had to fight.
And I'll take it out.
You can see light and all the hope that you have.
Again, to my ears, it just sounds a bit more controlled, a bit fatter, a bit more SE. But I think that's the transients kind of pushing through and a bit more squeezed. I'll move on now to the tape head, which is a lovely, lovely little plugin. Very hard to hear what it's doing. I'll quickly turn it on and off.
In the eyes of a child, you can see life.
That's on. Turn it off.
In everyone who had to fight.
So again, it's very subtle. It's very, very subtle. But to my ears, it adds a tiny, tiny bit extra. It's the extra couple of, 1%. In mixing, if you can add an extra percent, then it's good too. I find it's an accumulative kind of effect with mixing. You may make tiny moves, but lots of them, and in the end, they add up to something really substantial and something really worth, building up to. We have an echo here, a delay, which is a really amazing delay plugin. It's one of my favorite tape delay plugins. It's the EP34 from Universal Audio. This is just turning on in the choruses, automating to come on just to bring a bit more life to the choruses. I'm not actually using it in the verse, so I'll skip over that one for now. And then a de-esser, just to catch those S's.
In the
You can hear it, that's just the de-esser by itself, the frequencies that it's snipping out. You can hear this when you listen on smaller, kind of more lo-fi speakers. The S's can really take your head off. And it's always good to kind of take your mixes out and listen on multiple speakers and really keep your ears open for stuff like those S's, because they can be super distracting. Once you hear them, you can never quite unhear them. And I find myself hearing them on record sometimes, and it drives me a little bit crazy. I think we even did a bit more de-essing and mastering after, one of the mix was sent off, but this was the first stage. And then we move on to the buses. So this is where some really big dramatic effects start to happen. At the moment, I'll play you what we have just with these effects on, and then I'll show you one by one with the buses as well.
In the eyes,
with the track.
in the eyes of a child, you can see life in everyone who had to fight.
So we're getting a little bit more presence from the vocal already. I feel like it's sitting slightly better, but it's missing a bit of the kind of glue that's needed to kind of gel it into the track. And that's where some of these tricks come in, and some of my favorite tricks here. This send down here, the S delay, stereo delay, is a stereo delay from it's a Pro Tools stock plugin. You have a left and a right, and I've set the delay times different on the left and different on the right. So we've got 62 milliseconds on the left, 84 on the right. I find when you set two different delay speeds, one left, one right, you get a kind of movement that's a little bit more human than just having a digital delay that's perfectly matched or synced to your tempo. This way it's just above the audible delay range. 50 milliseconds generally is kind of where delays become reverbs, and if you go faster than 50 seconds, then you're getting into kind of reverb territory. So it's kind of a slap sound that you're going to get from this. I'll just play you a bit of what it sounds like. It's this one here. I'll solo it up.
In the eyes of a child, you can see life in everyone who had to fight. You can see life.
So to my ears, we're gaining an extra couple of percent again into this kind of gelling thing that I'm trying to do here in the track. A couple of extra percent. It's subtle and you can't really hear it in the track, which is always what I'm striving to do as a mix engineer, just to add things that aren't distracting from the vocal but make the vocal bigger and make the vocal sit in the track better. Delays are really great for this. For years I was struggling with reverbs, trying to make that happen and taking up way too much space and things. It's very hard to match a reverb, I find, but with a delay it's been a huge realization for me that delays are kind of the way forward for how I mix. I think so. After the delay, I've just rolled off a bit of the top end here, and it's a good thing to get into to start EQing your sends, your effects, to chuck stuff after them. It was just a bit distracting having a lot of top end bouncing left and right. So I think taking the top end off has made it is kind of given more of a room sound. It feels like that it's opened the vocal out even more. Okay, so we're going to move on now to the next send, which is this one here. Let's move down and find it. 13, 14. So we've got this is the Waves Doubler. I've come to use this more and more and more as the more I mix. You can use it very subtly if a vocal is stripped down with it, an acoustic track, or you can use it a bit more in a track like this. This is just a thickener. It's kind of like a pitch plugin. I'll just play you a bit, and you can see what you think about it.
In the eyes of a child, you can see life in everyone who had to fight.
I'll turn it off.
You can see light and all the hope that you have.
So we're getting a bit of more on the left and the right. I think I might turn it up just a tiny bit. I've got it automated to come up and down on certain stages. So we'll turn the send up a little bit so you can hear it clearer.
In the eyes of a child, you can see life in everyone who had to fight. You can see light.
So this is helping to spread that vocal, to kind of helps it to absorb into its surroundings a bit better instead of just sitting out there by itself, dry and lonely. This is kind of adding more flavor sprinkling more flavor onto that thing and just helping it to kind of absorb itself into the track. I really love what this thing does, and then combined with the slap, you get a bit of this going on.
In the eyes of a child, you can see life in everyone who...
Right, okay, so we're going to move on to another delay now. So 2930, this comes down to this, which is the EP34, one of my favorite things. It's on an eighth note delay with a bit, not too many repeats. And I'll show you what it's doing.
The eyes of a child, you can see life in everyone who had to fight. You can see light and all the hope that you have.
So it's a bit more dramatic, that one. But when you put it in with the track,
The eyes of a child, you can see light in everyone who had to fight.
so it's a bit more obvious in the track this. You could even pull back from it a bit more than that. I think maybe I've overdone it just a tiny bit here. So I probably would go down here, get the level of the send and just pull it down just a tiny bit.
In everyone who had to fight, you can
So you're just getting the tail on that, just a tiny bit of more absorption, more kind of, blending into the track. And then finally, I think we have this mono bus here, which is just going to an 1176. So we're doing some parallel compression here. We're sending a send off to another compressor. I think it was the volume wasn't quite happening within this, and the fatness was lacking a tiny bit. Let's just hear it without, and then I'll put it in.
in everyone who had to fight.
I'll put it in.
You can see light and all the hope that you have.
Just a tiny bit more fatness, just a little bit more fatness. In fact, I think we do actually have one more thing, which is I think it's a mono plate. They're down here, the EMT 140 Universal Audio plate. Amazing sounding thing. Let's just play that.
In the eyes of a child, you can see light
Take it out.
in everyone who had to fight.
Put it in.
You can see light.
Subtle again, but adding kind of height to the vocal. That's what I see some of these reverbs do. The delays can add width and a bit of depth, and this is kind of adding a bit more height to help that vocal out, so it's not so lonely in the middle. And that is everything. That was quite a mission, because there was a lot to get through, and it's a proper nerd out on the vocal here. If this is your thing, then I really hope you got something from that. It's taken me a long time to build up these tricks and tips. And again, rewind the video, go back, watch individual parts again, and apply them to your mixes. Just try them out. Maybe they won't work, maybe they will. This is kind of tailored for this track. But you can dial in different levels of these effects in different mix environments, and they can work on all kinds of things: guitars, vocals, drum hits, solos, and they've really helped me out over the years. So yeah, I'll play the whole thing together just to hear the end result.
In the eyes of a child, you can see light in everyone who had to fight. You can see light in all the hope that you have. It's for everyone around you. Just one more reason and one more chance. It's only life.
So there you have it. So this has been my very, very first ever mix tutorial for anything ever. So I would really appreciate any feedback that you guys have, anything in the comments. If this has helped you in any way at all, then please let me know about it, because I'm genuinely interested. And I really hope that you have derived some value from these tricks. I'm going to be doing a lot more of these mix videos, diving into details about compression, EQ, more effects, drum mixing. I think my next one will be drum mixing, actually, to have a good rock drum kit session on the mix. And if you're interested, my studio is Echo Room Recordings. I'll put it in the description. And this is what I do for a living, all day, every day. So if you are interested in having anything mixed, then please get hold of me. If you want anything recorded, then please get hold of me. And I'd love to hear from you guys. So yeah, thanks very, very much for watching. And I'll see you guys on the next video.